Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. I'm your host, Coach Zach. I'm here with Coach Zach and sweet as candy, Coach Brandy. What's going on, guys?
Hello. Excited for the holiday week.
Yeah, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. When you guys hear this, Thanksgiving will have already been passed by a week. But did I say tomorrow?
Yes, you did.
I wish it was tomorrow, but it's 2 days away. We always record on Tuesdays. But we're back this week with more Nutrition Don'ts. So we decided to do a part 2. And I think we could probably do like a part 6, a part 8, we could just talk about this forever. But before we kind of dive into some new Nutrition Don'ts, I wanted to give a shout out to a client of the week. And I should preface this by saying, like, anytime we give a client of the week, the episode is not about them.
Right.
Because we've had that happen before. They hear, we're like, okay, yeah, we want to give a shout out to so-and-so. And then they're like, did you do that whole podcast about me? And I was like, no. That wasn't the point. But this one probably wouldn't be a bad thing if we did. So we want to give a shout out to Rich Sharp. And if we were going to, we'd say he does really good with his nutrition. And actually, since joining, has completely transformed his life and is just like if you had to create an avatar client, he would be it. Like total buy-in, right? Listens to and takes to heart everything that we're teaching him and trying to get him to change. And he craves it and he asks us for more and he wants to understand and have the explanations and a deep understanding of, why it is that we're telling him to do what it is. And then he goes and applies it.
Right.
So to have somebody that wants the knowledge and then goes and applies is amazing. Right. So, huge fan. And I told him this morning, cause I met with him. I just said, dude, I'm so proud of you because it's a refreshing to see that type of enthusiasm and change in somebody.
Yeah, it's a wonderful. And then I just want to mention Megan Sharp also. She is doing amazing. So Rich started coming in first and then he brought his wife in and now Megan is coming in consistently. She's doing awesome as well. And then they told me that they're showing things to their kids and they're having their kids, do some training at home too. So they're having that effect on their children as well. So that's just great.
Yes. That's It's so awesome. And Zach, you have brought that up multiple times on a couple of different episodes about like setting the example as a parent, right? So I'm going to dive into our topic today, which is like nutrition don'ts. And I'm going to kick it off with my nutrition don't is don't feed your kids different food than you eat. That's one of my first nutrition don'ts. Because there's so many parents out there like, my kid won't eat that, so I feed him mac and cheese. And I'm like, you know how horrible that is for you. And you know that if you eat that, it's going to make you fat eventually and unhealthy. But you're feeding it to your kid just because they have a good metabolism and they're young and they're able to burn it off. It doesn't mean that it's good for them.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it goes both ways too. Like sometimes I've heard parents who will give their kids healthy food because they know it's healthy, but that's not something that they like follow through with.
What about alcohol, though?
Right?
Let's hope not.
So it would work both ways, right? Either you're doing something like good for them that you should be doing as well, or it's like vice versa. You're making them like you're strict on their food, but you don't hold yourself to the same accountability.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
And it's so much easier. Like if you start giving your kids healthy, nutritious food when they're little, it's so much easier as they become teenagers to, transition those healthy habits into a lifetime of healthy habits.
Yeah, for sure. Right. I mean, if they are raised that way and they don't know anything different, it's like, they're probably not, it's probably not even going to taste good or be appealing to them later on. Right. So, okay, Brandy, we'll go to you next for your nutrition don't.
My first one is don't keep doing the same thing nutrition wise and expect a different result. So, if you're not seeing the results that you want in terms of body composition and you're eating the same foods all the time, don't.
It's nobody's fault but your own.
That. Right.
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 Like, yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
If you want to feel better, if you want different body composition, you need to change your nutrition habits.
There's a good sales pitch there for you as the nutrition coach, right? Which is the training part always just seems to be like the main focus for people and so easy. And then you bring up, okay, like let's talk about a plan for outside of the gym,
right?
Your nutrition and accountability, and people like know they need that. They come in and they're like, I need accountability, right? And I need help with my nutrition. And then it's like, okay, well, let's do the nutrition coaching. They're like, whoa. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. Right. It's like,
right.
What's going to change if you don't? You're going to keep doing the same thing over and over again. And
right.
You're not going to see the changes in your body because you're doing the same thing.
Yeah. And you could also like, it could be like, if you don't change, it doesn't have to be just like the food. It could just be like your like habits of eating, like when you eat, how much portions you eat for each one. Even if it's like too hard right off the bat to be like, I can't just keep eating this same exact food. You could change other like aspects about your daily intake anyway.
Right. And it doesn't have to be a complete overhaul of, your nutrition. It can, start simple, start with one change at a time and then work from there.
Of course. Right. Because otherwise you're not going to stick with it.
Right.
Right. So yeah. Okay, Zach.
Okay. My first one would be, I think most people that are new to like nutritional change and stuff like that, they major in the minor things. So like, this means like people, when they ask me questions, they're like, if they're like, are really trying to like change their lifestyle and their nutrition habits and stuff like that. And they ask me these like such niche questions of things. I'm like, which I most time probably don't even really answer. Cause I'm like, this doesn't matter. Like, it's not applicable to you. If we're like, you shouldn't be asking me about like the supplement benefits of like beta alanine on your nutrition if you don't eat vegetables, right? Like that's so like we like our priorities tend to be wrong sometimes because like there's so like an overload of information everywhere that they hear all these things that are these like, oh, I need to do this, I need to have this, and I'm like, you need to like sleep enough and eat vegetables and fruits and protein source, and like that's it, and like that will change your life. Like if you can focus on that, all that other stuff like helps in margins for like mostly like high level people. It doesn't mean like an athlete, but like if you're already really dialed in on your diet and whatever all your stuff is, those little things can make incremental changes and help you in little ways. But if you're new to it and you're really just struggling with the whole process, because it's a hard process, like you don't need to worry about any of those things. Like focus on that after everything is dialed in. Like I don't want to have a supplement conversation until the food is perfect. Like otherwise, like there's no point. And I think you just get in your head and you kind of like freak yourself out and get too overwhelmed because you're like, I need to know how to implement these little things, what they are, do I need them, how much do I need? It's like, you don't need to worry about any of it. So like, don't ask the questions. Like I promise, like it's not going to make some massive change.
Yeah. And a good comparison to that is like a workout program, right? When somebody starts, it's like, look, we got to take our lower body and we have to push and pull with it. And we have to take our upper body and we have to push and pull with it. That's pretty much it. And do some, like core exercises and stuff. And fundamentally, when it comes to nutrition, it's pretty much that simple. Like you would, like everybody needs to squat, right? Everybody needs to eat enough protein. Everybody needs to be able to pull. And it's like, okay, everybody needs to drink enough water. There's just these fundamental things. That's the same kind of concept as somebody coming in and being like, how do I train my serratus into my anterior serratus? And you're like, what? Like, what? It's like, let's just get in, let's be able to move first. And then we can worry about like the development of these smaller muscles or whatever, if that's even important at any point. And it might not be,
right.
So yeah, that's a good one. Like, because it's overcomplicating and then people can't stick with it either. Right. Because they're focusing on the minor details instead of like the big picture. And that's really like nutrition coaching. That's how we start is like, hey, let's look at your morning and see like, what should you eat for breakfast?
Yeah.
Okay. I
Just
need to
focus on that. At
Yeah,
first.
like I just need to have protein and, here are 3 healthy options for me to choose from.
Right.
That's it. And I can go to those anytime.
Yep.
And it's like, don't overcomplicate it. Right. Okay. I'll go next. Little round robin.
Like it.
So nutrition don't overdo your caffeine intake. So I'm a coffee drinker. I love drinking coffee. Just because I love the taste of it. But like there's a limit on how much you should take in. And then, people are drinking energy drinks constantly.
Right.
And I looked at the camera guy, Nick, because he usually has like an energy drink.
Got his water.
He's got the water today. But people just like, they put themselves in this horrible cycle, vicious cycle, where they can't sleep at night because they've had too much caffeine during the day or too late in the day to prevent a crash. Then they don't get enough sleep. Then they're tired. Then they need the caffeine, the coffee, the energy drink, what have you. And not only is that horrible for your adrenal glands because you'll eventually burn them out, but it's terrible for your metabolism. And it's terrible for your heart. There's so many negative consequences. And we talked in the last episode about like the ingredients, right? We kind of mentioned that. There is zero chance that energy drink labels are disclosing what is really like going on. You can't just take, 200 milligrams of caffeine and feel that way for a sustained period of time. It's like, what else is in there that's giving you that feeling, right? So big don't overdo your caffeine.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had the coffee conversation almost like 2 times, 3 times a week with people just because they come in with no water and coffee. And I'm like, bring some water next time you want to come work out. But they'll tell me like, oh, coffee's good for you, which like it is actually proven like coffee is good for you. I don't think you shouldn't drink coffee. I just see that the problem isn't coffee. The problem is that the people who drink coffee tend to be so heavily dependent on the coffee that it would be like my drawback to like be more hesitant about like you like drinking coffee all the time, just because like coffee in itself is good and does help increase some performance aspects. But like if I don't know many people who drink coffee who aren't heavily reliant on it, where if you removed it, they would like go through withdrawal like symptoms. Like,
and are you really enjoying it if you're drinking it at the gym?
Correct. Yeah. On your way on the car ride here.
Well, and then it often turns from coffee then to soda, then to energy drink. And then it affects your sleep, like you mentioned, and then you're not getting the recovery that you need as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Since we're on this topic, I'm going to throw out another one. Don't drink regular coffee. And by regular, I mean non-organic coffee. Coffee is one of the highest manipulated crops in the world with pesticides, herbicides, GMO altered, like it's horrible. Then you take this bean, you grind it up and you soak it with hot water in order to get everything out of it. Like you're just pumping a bunch of chemicals into your body. Like do yourself a favor and get some really good organic coffee.
I can attest to that.
Are you a coffee drinker?
I drink coffee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought Zach only drinks water. I'm like, okay.
I drink coffee and water.
Coffee and water.
2 beverages.
That's basically me too.
It's almost a repeat of last week with the alcohol. It was me and Brandy against you.
I know. Okay, Brandy.
Drink lots of water.
Yes.
That was going to be one of my don'ts, but I'll just tag it on here. Is I was going to say don't underestimate your hydration and how much water you should be drinking during the day.
Yeah.
Should strive for at least 60 ounces of water.
At least
a day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you live in Arizona, I mean, there's no like one size fits all with water, right? You hear like, oh, you got to drink the 8 glasses a day or something. Every single person is different. Your climate is different. Like your water demands are different from person to person. There's no like one size fits all.
Right. And if you're working out, you're in the gym, you're sweating, it's hot outside, you're going to need more water.
Yes. And if you don't sweat, that's a big problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
You might not be drinking enough water.
Right.
Yeah, and you also need to pay attention to like the form of hydration too. I know a lot of people, they try to like rehydrate after they've been dehydrated with like just water, and like that doesn't really just like fully rehydrate you, because you lose a lot of things that aren't just water when you are sweating or whatever it may be. So like,
drink sports drinks. That's what you're
no. So just like being mindful of, other than like, I can't just solely only ever drink water if I'm like, especially if you're like we said, if you live here, like you're sweating a lot and you're losing a lot of stuff that can't be replenished just by standard water.
A lot of trace minerals and stuff, which are easy to supplement. Like you can get trace minerals, you just put them in your water, right? And in reverse osmosis takes everything out, the good and the bad. And most people here have a reverse osmosis in their house, and it's like that's great because you're removing toxins from your water, but at the same time you're also removing all of the minerals from it. It's a good health tip to add trace minerals to your water to make sure you're getting enough. But if your diet's there, you should be getting it, but it never hurts to add some, especially when it's hot and it's 110 degrees here. So, okay.
Mine?
Yeah, let's go, Zach.
I'll say two of them just because one kind of is like blended in the last one I did. My original one was just supplement dependency, just because I know it's like a new topic to people when they are first introduced into like trying to change their diet, and they're very worried about supplements and stuff like that. I'm not, like, we kind of already talked about that for the same reasons. Like you should have a full, complete diet like on point before you worry about supplements. But the other thing I was going to say is that I see a lot, you try to take like, you know, somebody that this diet worked for them, and so then you just try to implement the same thing because you think it's going to work the same way. And there's a lot of like coaches out there, you know, who do the same thing. Like, though, this worked for this person, so I'm going to implement that all across the board for a bunch of different people. And it really just, unfortunately, doesn't work that way, just because there's a ton of factors that you have to like take into account for each person. Like whatever works for Brandy definitely isn't going to work for me. So like, it's just something that, it's not something that should be implemented across the board. And just because you see somebody who might have lost 50 pounds on this diet and they look great now, doesn't mean that that's something that you like. It doesn't mean it's going to hurt you, but it also doesn't mean like that you need to stick to that and that it's going to gain you the same results that work for somebody else.
Good. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's
got to find what works for you. Yeah. And I mean, I hear people all the time, well, you know, what are your macros, or how much protein are you eating? That's different for every single person.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I'll throw one out here. So don't heat your food in plastic.
It's a good one.
It's a good one.
You said this to me before.
That is a good one.
Plastic is just like this chemical makeup. So many foods are packaged in it, right? And that is what it is, right? I'm not saying like don't ever buy anything that's in a plastic container, because that limits the amount of things that you can actually buy. But when you heat your food up in it, that plastic is now some of the chemicals are coming out and getting in your food, and then you're eating that. So there are a lot of endocrine disruptors in plastic, so it can mess up your hormone balance. And then there's obviously like some brain barrier issues, like blood-brain barrier issues. If your liver and your skin can't filter those out, then you're going to have gut issues, which causes leaky gut syndrome. And then these chemicals can pass into your brain, and then that can cause all kinds of different issues: depression, schizophrenia, just brain fog, poor cognitive function, all of those things, right? So, you know, the immediate thing that you'd probably notice first would be decline in your hormone performance. But then after that, there can be these other things as well. So I caution people against that. I'm like, if it comes in a plastic container, dump it in glass and heat it up in a glass container or on a plate or something in the microwave, and then eat it.
Yep. That's a good one. Invest in some glass Tupperware.
Get some glass Tupperware. So,
yep.
All right, Brandy, you're up.
Don't eat mindlessly.
Ooh.
Is my next one. Yeah. So, you know, you might find yourself at the end of the day, So maybe part of your daily routine is to sit down, watch a show at the end of the day to unwind. And then just out of habit, you're grabbing something and eating. You're not hungry, but you're just eating because that's what you normally do at the end of the day. So I'd really encourage everyone to think about and be very mindful about when they're eating and what they're eating, and eat when you're hungry, not just because, you like to sit down and munch on something while you're watching TV or whatever it is that you're doing.
Yeah. If you're distracted and you're not actually thinking about like the food that you're eating, one, are you really enjoying it or tasting it?
Right.
Not really, because you're not paying attention to it, and we just can't focus on more than one thing at a time. Like humans, you're not thinking about your socks right now on your feet, right? But they're there. And if you focus on it, you're like, okay, now I can feel my, I can feel my, everybody's like, oh yeah, I feel my socks. But like same concept when you're putting food in your mouth, but you're watching TV, you're distracted. You're not actually tasting the food that you're putting in your mouth or thinking about it.
Right.
So there's really no point in that. And then you're going to overeat too. Like you're grossly going to underestimate the amount that you're eating. And people like to snack on things that are like pieces, right? So you're having like chips,
yes,
or you're having nuts or some sort of sweet, like a M&M or something. It's like, you're gonna eat a lot of those before you realize that how many you've taken in, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say stress plays a factor in that too. So I think, really, if you are feeling stressed and your normal tendency is to reach for something to manage or deal with that stress, think of other ways to manage stress, whether it's getting up and going for a walk or, going and talking with someone and kind of working through that rather than reaching for something and eating as a way to deal with stress.
Or drinking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I would say also like falls under like eating for stress, and just if you're eating mindlessly, like your example, like at the end of the day, like it tends to not be great food either. Like I don't know much people, if they're like to de-stress and they kind of sit down and watch TV at the end of the day, like they're probably not grabbing like the best of foods. It's usually just food that you can sit there like on the couch and eat and kind of just like
it's usually not broccoli.
No, not usually. And the problem also like mindless eating is that it tends to be way overeating too. So like most people just in general, if you just like eat until you're full, like by the time you like really feel full, you are far past like the amount of portion that you actually should have eaten, right? Like, so that's a big problem. Besides, it's usually not great food. And then it's usually, especially if you're just snacking, like if you snack until you're full, like that's a lot of food that you had to consume. And the problem is that doesn't happen very quickly, right? So you could be there for a long time, just mindlessly consuming all these not necessary calories.
Yep. All right, let's do one more. Who wants it, Zach or Brandy?
I can throw one out there.
Okay, you're up, Brandy.
Okay, so I would also say don't blow your whole nutrition program over the weekend.
Oh,
so
yes. I'm so glad you ended with this one.
So I hear from people, I did really good during the week, and then Friday comes and they go out Friday night, they go out Saturday night, or whatever it is that they're doing over the weekend, and they completely throw everything out the window, eat whatever they want, drink whatever they want, feel miserable come Monday, and then feel like they're completely starting from scratch on Monday, or they do well Monday through Thursday, and then everything goes out the window.
Yeah.
That's hard to recover from.
It is. And I think that a big part of that comes from like the restrictive mindset, right? Like during the week, people are like, I can't have this, can't have this, can't have this. And then they get to the weekend and they're like, all right. Then they let themselves, because there's no parameter or boundary around what they're going to allow themselves to do.
Right.
They go nuts, right? It's like a teenager when their parents leave town, right? That's one piece of it. And then the other piece is that during the week you're distracted and you're busy. And so it's easier to stay on track because it's like you got all these things going on, and you maybe need to be a little bit more structured just with everything throughout your week. Then you get to the weekend and you don't really have that structure, and you're letting down, and then you get this mindless eating, and people are like revolving a lot of their activities even around food
Right,
or
around food.
drinking or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, like most things, I think people overdo it too. So like they'll be like, "Oh, I was good all week. Like I deserve this." Like
The reward mindset.
yeah, and like I hear people say that. I mean, you hear it a lot. Like for food, like, "Oh, I deserve this. I was good all week. Oh, I deserve a break. I worked out this many days," and things like that. And usually you deserve the body you have for the most part. So like if you are constantly like, "Oh, I did this. I deserve," like it's really not the way it works. When people have like, if you're like striving towards a like goal of like somebody looks the way you would like to look, whatever, like it didn't happen that way, right? Like I wasn't like, "Oh, I ate good for 4 days. I deserve this. I'm going to eat like terrible for 2 days," right? Like it doesn't, because it's one meal is not the problem.
Right.
The mindset with it in the like slope that it puts you down is like very dangerous, because like cheat days is crazy to me. You know how much you could eat in one day? Like you could disrupt everything you did for the past week because you had a weekend where you were just terrible and you knew it. And like we hear it a lot too, like if you go on vacation or whatever it may be, like you could just find the justification for anything you do. So if you're like, "Oh, well, I was on vacation, I was here, I was doing this, there wasn't stuff around," like, oh, like it's not a big deal in one small portion. But when you like implement that over a course of multiple meals within the day, snacks within the day, and then multiple days that you're gone or whatever it may be, like that causes serious problems because it lingers into the following days, even when you're back. So It's not just like an isolated incident where you're gone and now when you're back, everything's fine. It didn't happen.
Yeah. And I think we can kind of go back to how we started with there's no like one size fits all with this either. Right. And so based off of somebody's lifestyle, they might have to have multiple events or something that they're going to as part of their job. And so it's like, okay, how do we navigate that? Like, what are the boundaries that we set around that event? And so, if I have a cheat meal, if I had 3 cheat meals a week, like that might not screw me up based off of how I do it. Right. If I have like 3 cheat days or 2 cheat days or 1 cheat day, like even without 1 day of just a free for all, like you said, Zach, is enough to disrupt everything. Mm-hmm. And so you have to consider everybody's lifestyle, right? Which would be like going back to the nutrition coaching is like where that comes in, is to help you navigate that and figure out, okay, here's where we can get away with that. And then here's where we can't, right? These are the boundaries that you have to live within and make that manageable for people. And then they know that they have enough freedom, but that they still have this plan in place, and they're not going to just destroy their hard work.
That's right.
Yeah. And I think if you look at it logically too, like if you eat 4 meals a day, that's 28 meals plus or minus a couple just throughout what you happen throughout the week. But 28 meals in the week, technically, if you ate 1 or like 3 or 4 like cheat meals through the week, like 24 out of 28 is good. But the problem would be like if you're like every day, I'm going to have 1 because I had 3 good ones. Like that would be like where the issue is, right? If you just look at logically, like that's how I kind of approach my own stuff, would be like, because I know that I'm good mostly all the time, that it's not a problem to every once in a while, like whatever the situation is, like to eat it poorly, just because I know like if I'm eating 30 meals a week and I mess up on 3 of them, like that's a pretty good percentage if you look at it, right? Like,
yeah. And over the course of a year too, I mean, I'm like zoom way out. Right. And if it's like, 365 days in a year, if you eat poorly for 100 of those, that's a big chunk of your year. Right. And so get a higher point of view and kind of look at everything and then approach it accordingly. So, all right, guys, that's all we have time for today. We'll be back with you next week with more great stuff. Thank you so much for listening to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. Do you have a question that you'd like for us to answer live on the podcast? If so, all you need to do is head over to the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone and do 3 simple things. First, leave us a rating and review telling me what you think of the podcast. In that review, ask anything you want related to health, fitness, or nutrition. And if you want a shout out, leave us your Instagram handle or name. That's all you have to do. Then listen to hear your questions answered live on the next Q&A episode.